You either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird Shorts, the show where we talk about what originally was supposed to be movies in theaters and now has devolved to Netflix originals. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris. Yeah, this is just morphed into whatever we can get that's new and fresh at home.
Or whatever sounds good to us at the moment, but not enough for a full episode.
True. So this week we wanted to do something that easily accessible, is new, and something that we hadn't really seen anything about before.
Yeah.
It just kind of showed up and we were like, yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, so I actually have my buddy Ching to recommend for to give credit to recommending this, because this wasn't on my radar at all until he told me I should see it, because we'd been talking about My Hero Academia.
Oh, yeah.
So it naturally led into Project Power.
Yeah. Netflix original, came out a little while ago. We don't really want to spoil anything for you on this one, because it is new. I do think you should go see it, especially since you got nothing better to do.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of talk around the story and about some of the characters. But quick overview. Imagine a world where a pill exists, and you take the pill and you might get superpowers.
For 5 minutes. It's not a long effect either.
And the part that makes this movie interesting to me whatsoever, because we've seen the instant superpower thing before. It's not unfamiliar, especially if you're into the anime world. Yeah,
and as you know, I'm not a fan of American superheroes because they've become tiresome and
it's a
overdone.
little they're very repetitive. So
Thank
this
you, Marvel.
One, yes, Marvel is a good example of we see the same superpower a bunch of times.
Yeah,
Project Power does bring a fresh twist on this. The powers that everyone's given, it is something. Let's say it's random. The movie explains it better than that, but let's, for the sake of not spoiling anything, say that it's kind of random. No one's going to have exactly the same superpower, theoretically.
It's random the first time you take it.
And
after,
then you know.
Yeah, then you know what your power is.
Yeah. So I do appreciate the level of creativity with some of the superpowers. You got some of the more standard ones, like super strong, bulletproof, fire, ice, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But where they take those, I really like.
Yeah, and the main story follows a young woman named Robin, who's an aspiring rapper.
Yes.
As she's trying to hustle on the streets and just
trying to survive.
Survive and save up money for her mom.
Yeah.
And also involved with her is Frank, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Robin's played by Dominic Fishback, who new to me.
Honestly, this movie really exists to show off her. I learned today that she had never rapped before this movie. Shit. So while all of this was pre-written for her, her flow is like her natural ability.
Okay.
So girl's got some damn good talent.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect that from...
Yeah, for a first time go at it.
Yeah. It felt very natural, like they practiced it.
Yeah, and this is very much like she's been in stuff, but this to me feels like her first real big public, like everyone's gonna see this movie sort of movie.
Yeah, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, as we know from everything.
Yeah, he's in a lot.
He plays Frank, a cop who's trying to tackle the issues. The movie's set in New Orleans.
Yes.
In a somewhat future New Orleans, not too far advanced.
Yeah.
And he's trying to track down where this drug power is coming from, and he's using Robin as a way to get information.
Yep.
And slowly we're introduced to Art, played by Jamie Foxx.
Yes.
Who's a man trying to also track down the source, but there's some confusion on what he's actually doing from other cast members.
Yeah.
And I think we'll leave it at that, just because that's really the key to the
Yeah, those are the
plot.
three main characters. Everyone who's introduced after that are people who you'll recognize them. Like, this movie is packed with names that you will know and you will recognize.
I was surprised because I only know...
Which one?
I only know him by name, and I didn't see it until I was looking up the crew or the cast. Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah, no, okay, Machine Gun Kelly has a wonderfully blank face that when he's in a movie, it's hard to spot him. And then once you know it's him, you're like, of course it's Machine Gun Kelly. Yeah, no. If you're into rap, this movie does have a lot of nice little Easter eggs for you. There's a lot of posters in the background to some OG rappers, some really big names. Machine Gun Kelly's in it. Dominique does a really good performance in it. Granted, it's all part of the script, but it feels really good and really nice. And it becomes part of her character. Oh, hi, Charlie.
Oh, shush.
It becomes part of her character, and it feels like it's not a gimmick like a lot of movies use rapping.
Yeah.
Like, this is part of her and who she is and what she wants to be.
It feels, for me, like, because we had some questions going into the movie, because we'd never seen it before.
Yeah.
And
I'd only seen a trailer, and I watched, like, a part of it because my husband watched it before I got to it.
And with the state of everything right now, it seemed like it might be a bit touchy. But
or potentially pandery, which we didn't want to get into.
And this movie doesn't at all. It feels like a very well-rounded, natural cast. It doesn't feel forced. It does touch on some prickly issues.
An example of prickly issue is how New Orleans was handled after Hurricane Katrina. Healthcare in the United States and how that's handled, especially if you are not a rich person.
Yep.
But it doesn't drive those points into the ground. It kind of just lets you know that this world has problems.
Yeah.
It's the same world that you're living in, but now it's got potentially magic powers.
Exactly. And I'll get into it a little bit later, but that's a point of contention for me for this movie.
Fair.
But let's talk about it a little bit, because concept-wise, I love this movie.
Yes.
I love these little twists and take on the superhero genre. Kind of, it's like a grittier version, or it reminds me a little bit of like a grittier version of Kick-Ass or something along those lines, where these people kind of have superpowers, but they also don't, like, they're well trained. But this, instead of like, superpowers are new in this universe.
Yes, this is all brand new for everybody.
Yeah.
I like the concept of this movie a lot. Mm-hmm. I like the music of this movie tremendously. The movie would not be the same without the music, which is a common thing for most movies, but I think this one really hits home. The cinematography matches the music really, really beautifully. The music really leads you through the whole movie. It kind of narrates it in some parts. It's really well done. Yeah. The thing that my one really big critique of the movie is that it's a movie, which is something I don't normally say. I hate TV. I hate TV shows. I don't have the attention span. I don't have the patience. I kind of wish this was done more like Sherlock Holmes, the BBC Sherlock Holmes was. Yeah. Where each episode is an hour and a half long, but we know we're going to get more of the universe, thus time to develop everybody.
Yes, and that's probably one of my... Well, I'll just go ahead and say it right now. Like I mentioned, my biggest contention was that it only, like, graced some of these subject matters.
It doesn't full-on address any of them.
My issue with it is it reminds me, plot-wise, and yes, I think it would be better if we already knew there was going to be more coming, and they do, spoilers at this point, they do hint that there's more coming.
But, I mean, what movie in this 20th century do we live in that doesn't have a sequel promise?
What superhero movie do we have now that doesn't have potential for a second?
The fact that we now live in a world where romance comedies are getting sequels, at this point, it's all game. Yeah.
Well, for me, when I finished it, I felt like I love the concept of the movie, but it felt me thinking of the first time I watched the first Purge movie. Yeah. Where I love the concept of it, but the world
you needed more.
Exactly. Whereas, like, the world's established, they just needed that little bit more, or that little bit of edginess that the Purge really took in the next movies. And maybe that's a good thing too, that this one didn't dive deep into that, and it leaves it open to explore the rest of the world.
This movie very much felt like the first 3/4 of a book. Mm-hmm. Like, I felt like, we got a conclusion, but I would have been more excited to have a to be continued, where we do explore more of these issues a little bit more deep. Yeah. But it's not a bad movie. No. And honestly, I've been left hanging with a lot less for a lot longer. So...
True.
Like, the ending to this isn't bad. The story it tells isn't bad. The issues that they touch on are there for a reason, which I'm not mad at. I just kind of wished a little bit more. The only thing that I will say potentially, like because I'm thinking of some of my friends who I've recommended watch this.
Yeah.
I know I have a few friends who are going to complain to me that the plot is dumb. And that's because this is kind of an action superhero movie. It's got an action-based plot. You get from point A to point B, and that's kind of it. But this is also a really cool-looking movie. Yeah,
and there's parts of it that I actually, now that I'm thinking of, because we're on the cusp of spooky season, this episode will actually...
so close.
Yeah, this episode will actually come out in October, so even though it's not a horror film, we were planning to do this earlier, but Titanic happened.
Oh, Titanic.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, at its core, it's a very simple superhero movie. A dad trying to find his kid, a cop trying to do the right thing, and a girl trying to find her place in the world.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
No,
especially not for this movie.
Yeah.
Because, like I already kind of mentioned, this movie is something to watch. Mm-hmm. Like, visually, this movie is very satisfying.
Yes.
This movie's CGI was spot on.
Oh, yeah. No,
and its camera work was also very satisfying.
Yeah, no, I honestly loved watching this movie. And even, like, with the superpowers, as we talked a little bit before we started this, that some of them are kind of dumb, but at the same time, I like it because it makes me think of My Hero Academia, where, like, mom can create a little gravity field that only pulls like small objects towards her, and his dad can breathe a little bit of fire.
Yes.
Like
my favorite question to ask people when I'm meeting someone for the first time is, what is your dumb, useless superpower? Example being, I can change a red light, like I can change a green light to a yellow light. Not red to green, green to yellow. Nobody needs that. Nobody wants that. It's dumb. But this movie hints at there being dumb superpowers, but instead of there just being dumb superpowers with people who live their ordinary days, there are dumb superpowers, and then there are people who have that dumb superpower and use it in a cool and creative way.
Yeah, because they do mention in the very beginning that you can take the pill and explode.
Yeah, you could just die.
Yeah.
That is a risk, and part of the reason why there's any tension with not just letting everyone have this and like incorporating superpower X-Men style into the world, because then we would just have the X-Men.
Yeah.
Which I like that they bothered to put in their own safeguard against that loophole, because that is a danger with superhero movies. We've had a really long run of superheroes in the general public's knowledge. And it's gotten to the point where the general public even know the dumb superheroes that nobody used to know, like Quilt Man.
Yeah, or
Squirrel Girl.
Yeah.
Like we've gotten to a point where we're kind of running out of like cool superpowers.
Yeah, and I've got a book on regrettable superheroes and regrettable supervillains.
Exactly. And so like
that's right. My favorite one that I thought of that I remember off the top of my head is the Fab Five.
Yes.
Only because my mom has a group of friends and they call themselves the Fab Five.
Yes.
And all their powers are based off the colors of the rainbow.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Again, I'm not. I'm not, and that's the thing that.
But I don't care that there's dumb superheroes.
Yeah.
In this. Like, example being, they take the idea of being super squishy bones, and instead of taking it in the direction that a normal superhero movie would, they take it in slightly different direction. They use it as more of an action thing as opposed to like a spy museum robbing sort of way.
I do like this start of kind of subversion from our standard superhero films.
Yes.
And I think we saw it more so in the anime side of the world before America, because part of the reason I never got into like American superheroes is because they just seemed over the top powerful. And I know they're not all the time. There's always like the weakness, but it's always like the Superman where he's like overpowered and his weakness is a rock, or Spider-Man where it
depends on the Spider-Man, but he could just run out of web, or which I mean is actually kind of cool. But the other ones, I know American superheroes are more based off moral dilemmas, but what we've seen in anime is we have the moral dilemma on top of actual consequences for these superpowers. Yeah, and
we see that in this movie too.
Yeah, and the other thing that I like about this superhero movie is we don't get... I mean, we do kind of have an OP character, but that character knows what they are and who they are. And without spoiling anything, you don't care that there's a Goku-level character in a normal base game world. Because it doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there and play the who would win game. Because there's no questions. Which I like. That's one of the complaints superhero movies, especially American ones, that we've seen. That's kind of been the running gag is...
Well, and I think that's another thing that this movie adds to it, is that it's not like once they take the pill, they can use the power whenever. They have to take a pill every time they want to use it. And these pills are hard to get.
Yes. So, this movie is well thought out. There's not a lot of loopholes within itself, which is nice. The only thing that I'm really wondering about is how many people are going to rewatch this movie?
Okay, so, and I think that that completely depends on sequels.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to watch the original Purge unless I'm watching
all of
them together. Same with Saw. Like, the first Saw is good.
But I'm not going to rewatch it.
But I'm not going to rewatch it unless I'm rewatching the entire series. Well, scratch that. I would rewatch the original trilogy in my, as I mentioned in my chiller review.
Yes. But yeah, this movie's really good. I'm really hoping that a lot of people watch it and there's a big wave and talk around it. But I don't see it being a rewatched thing.
No.
At least not right away.
No.
It might get... It sets itself up very much for either being, like you said, a movie that's part of a larger world that people rewatch it then, or I kind of see this movie being popular for a little bit, then nobody's going to talk about it, and then years later, once we all desperately wish there was a sequel, that's when it's truly popular.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen that with quite a few series where they get kind of like this cult following to it, because this... I mean...
I can see this movie getting that.
Well, I was also just thinking back to, like, the original Iron Man.
Oh, yeah,
because at the core, Iron Man is a superhero movie, but it dealt with real issues at the time.
Sure.
And so that's why I think Iron Man was so successful and why they were able to spawn...
all of the other ones?
The less than stellar sequels.
Yeah.
But that's the thing I hope about this one, is that they did the opposite. Instead of dealing with a modern... Well, they did deal with a modern topic, but they glossed over it a little bit, that they'll be able to bring those and start implementing them into sequels. I
also think that the topics that they picked to add into the characters and the world for this one were well thought out, because they're problems that are not, like you said, with Iron Man, that was a problem and a topic that was very current. A lot of people had that on their mind. It was in the news. It was something we were seeing every single day as the movie came out. Whereas the topics for this movie, not that they're not in the news, they definitely are, but it's one of those things of like, hey, remember, this is still a thing. This is still a problem, even though it started way back here. Shouldn't we take care of this by now? It's that sort of conversation, which I think lends itself to potentially being more long-lasting than Iron Man's troubles. Because after a while, it wasn't in the news. It wasn't a thing anymore. Yeah, quickly went to Iron Man being a star and celebrity, because he is Iron Man. Having the gun show where he brings a Warhammer is that his name? I don't remember. But yeah, so I do hope that this movie, I think it set itself up really smart. I think it wrote itself really smart. I'm really, really hopeful for this movie to be a whole franchise. Yeah. I think it could, and I think a lot of people, it will give people stuff to talk about, especially if in the next one we see more of that creativity with more more explanation and exploration with the superpowers. Yeah, and I think maybe that is an issue with these kind of movies nowadays, or movies that are banking on potentially creating a franchise, because... Yeah, there is a risk. Even if you do it smartly, if you don't have that interest, there might not be anything else. Like, Netflix canceled the Dark Crystal series. Which is too bad, because, it has a huge cult following, but that's a cult following built up over decades. It's not something that's going to wash away box office tickets. No, and that's the thing about this one, too, is, honestly, I hadn't heard about it until
Ching mentioned it to me.
Yeah, for being a Netflix original, it for some reason hasn't been shoved down my Netflix throat like a lot of Netflix originals, and I kind of wonder if that's because this is one of the few Netflix movies as opposed to their TV series.
Well, no, because Netflix is releasing a bunch of movies right now. I think part of the reason it might be a little subdued is just everything that's going on in the United States right now, and this movie just slightly touching it, and also Cuties is blowing up everything right now because people are freaking out.
Which, to be fair, that is a trash movie. But the other thing that this movie does have writing against it, not necessarily because it doesn't deserve it or need it, is it is R-rated. Which, for Netflix, which is notoriously tried to be in the family-friendly category with its originals, even if that family-friendly thing is bullshit, looking at you cuties, but this movie needs an R rating. Its graphics need the R rating. Its topics need it. However, that does mean that Netflix can't advertise it to everybody.
Exactly.
Which is part of... It's a two-handed sword. We saw the same thing with other R-rated movies.
Yeah,
so,
it's like anytime we see a horror film and they're saying, oh, it's going to be PG-13, and we immediately drop to like, okay, this could have been good, but...
They cut a bunch of stuff out. This movie didn't cut any of the graphics out. It doesn't edge any of the death scenes. Mm-hmm. It doesn't hold anything back without being unnecessarily gory.
Yeah.
It doesn't turn itself into a horror movie for no reason. But it is R-rated, which means that less people are going to hear about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, I don't know. I feel like that's too bad.
No, I completely agree. I think the movie has a lot of things going for it, but I also think it's I don't know. Well, it's one of those movies where we will have to see how it holds up in the next couple years.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to finding out more about this movie and seeing where it goes. I thought everyone who was in it did fantastic.
Oh yeah.
My only acting spot that I had a little bit of a break from the story was unfortunately Casey Neistat. And that's only because he has such a specific face and look, and I already knew him and what he does, and I knew his story, and so him trying to play a badass gangster was a little bit like watching my child brother pretend to be a badass gangster. Like, the man is in real life a very nice and generous human, so that part caught me there, but that was mostly because it was he can't get away from the fact that he looks like Casey Neistat.
Okay.
He has a face that is incredibly recognizable. He cannot get around it.
Like Steve Buscemi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like T-Pain.
Okay.
There's no getting around it. He looks like he is, and while none of the acting was bad, that was the only part for me that it felt weird.
Yeah.
But that was it. That was the only scene. I thought everyone else did a fantastic job. I'm really interested to see where Miss Fishback goes from here. I'm excited to see her in a lot more stuff. Mm-hmm. So... I'm really hopeful.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, I would definitely say watch this movie. Give it at least a shot.
Yeah.
It's different enough from your superhero movies, but it also toes the line with a very standard plot at the same time, which is fine.
And like we said, it is visually very appealing. The music in it is absolutely phenomenal. Really, really great. So, I say that this is a watch, for sure.
Definitely. Give it a shot.
Definitely. So. And on top of it, you don't have to pay $30 for it. It's just part of Netflix.
Disney can go fuck itself.
They are, don't worry.
Oh, I'm well aware, but that's another topic for another episode.
Yes.
Anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Shorts.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.